Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So this past year, apart from the fact that I suddenly became very bougie and started drinking all of my sodas out of wine goblets, I, like many of you, became addicted to TikTok. And lately, TikTok has realized that I like books, and I've slipped into the territory of book talk, where everyone seems to have this magical, beautiful bookcase filled with books. Some people have their own personal library somehow. And I thought to myself, must be nice. Must be so, so nice. And then I remembered that I know how to make things, so I decided to make my dream library, or at least a little corner of it, my dream library. The other thing that happened is I got a shelf. So that was even more reason for me to make this miniature slice of a library and make my shelf look beautiful, while also giving you guys a video. So please enjoy. So here's my initial sketch. I've literally always wanted a bookshelf with a ladder, just like the one in Beauty and the Beast in the bookshop in the beginning of the movie. Obviously, I do not have the space for that in the tiny apartment where I live. So I'm making this miniature version to go on the new shelf that I've gotten. I drew all of the designs for this on different papers and then scanned them into the computer so they'd all be on one sheet. I'll have copies of these sheets available for download on my Patreon page, which is unofficially going to be launched right after this video goes live. But the official launch date is February 15th. For anyone who becomes a supporter on Patreon before February 15th, you will get a special shout out at the end of all of my videos for as long as you're a patron with the official title of founder. This is only going on until February 15th. I'm using transfer paper to transfer all of the markings from my page onto the surfaces that I'm going to cut out. To make the Chevron Floors, I'm using thin basswood. I'm using this thinner wood and gluing it down on top because the base is made out of a particle board with veneers of hardwood on either side of it. And it's more difficult to scribe the markings into that than into this basswood. This tool that I'm using to scratch in all of the markings onto the floorboards is for nail art. It's another tool that I had in my supply box, and I picked it up at the dollar store or at Daiso. I can't remember, but I just had it on hand. I'm staining the wood black with India ink, and then I'm using white acrylic paint to go over it with a dry brushing technique where you remove most of the paint and use only a little bit of color to go over the area. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking about one of my favorite books of all time for this build. This involves me telling you guys a little bit of a story. Up until I was in about the 3rd grade, I was utterly convinced that I did not know how to read. Was this true? No, but I was 100% positive. And the first novel that I ever finished was recommended to me by the librarian at my school, and that book was The Secret Garden. If you're not familiar with The Secret Garden, it's a story about a little girl who loses both of her parents and is sent to live with her uncle. Her uncle lives in an enormous mansion with hundreds of rooms, all of which are mostly abandoned because he has a broken heart from losing his wife. And the reason the book is called The Secret Garden is because the main character's uncle has locked away the garden that his wife once loved and forbidden anyone to open it or mention it. The main character finds the garden and starts to regrow everything inside of it. And she works on mending the broken heart of her uncle and bringing life back into the castle where he lives. It's a really awesome story, but the thing that I think I loved the most about it was the castle with all of the rooms that were just sitting frozen in time. Unconsciously, I think I wanted to create a library that felt like it could exist in that space. So this library has sort of a frozen in time antique aesthetic. I decided to make the library using leftover wood and cardboard that I had in my craft supplies. I was working with a pretty restricted amount of space for this build, and I couldn't do the entire room, so I chose to do a couple of bookshelves and the door leading into the library. I used cardboard for the main back of the project, and then I used thin plywood for the back of the bookshelves. For the door, I used cardstock paper and glued it to the cardboard. Initially, I didn't have any plans for the door to be functional, but that changed later on in the build. I used 1/8 of an inch thick basswood for the walls of the bookshelf, and I believe I've also heard basswood referred to as linden wood in other parts of the world, but it is not to be confused with balsa wood, which they also sell at craft stores sometimes, and it is a lot softer than this wood, so you will probably run into issues if you try to use it for structural things, but I would recommend basswood if you're still looking for a wood that you can cut through with a normal craft knife, but that is a little bit stronger. I used more cardstock to make the base of the doorknob, and then I used polymer clay to shape the knob itself. At first, I tried attaching the doorknob just with super glue, but then I was running into issues, so I drilled a hole into the cardboard and then glued it in place, and that worked a lot better. To paint the doorknob black, I used the same ink that I used to tint the floorboards, and then I used Rub and Buff gilding wax, which has a very interesting name, to give it a metallic finish. I have some projects coming up where I'm going to be making more doorknobs, and I want to play around with the idea of making them completely out of polymer clay and possibly making some tiny little keys to go in the keyholes instead of using paper like I did for this project. I'm looking forward to doing some experiments with things like polymer clay, and maybe that can be an extra tier on my Patreon page. It was about this time, while painting the doorknob, that I realized, actually, I do want this door to be one that opens and closes. This is my downfall with a lot of my projects. I am trying super hard to set dates and deadlines and actually put these videos out at the time when I intend to, but all along the process, I keep having ideas that cause me to get very off track. And once I have these ideas, it's so hard for me to let them go, even if I don't have the skills or the material to make them happen. But I digress. Because I wanted this door to open and close, I ended up cutting it out of the cardboard back and then putting a strip of paper along the edge to hide the interior cardboard. And I also decided I wanted it to open into somewhere and not just lead to nothing. So I decided to add a box to go behind it. Since this was a spur of the moment decision, I made tiny paper hinges on the fly as a quick solution to the problem of how do I open and close this door. Looking back on the project now, I think it would have been fun to make tiny hinges, and I would have probably used the metal from a soda can, so I'm storing that away as possibilities for a future build. I glued on the tiny paper hinges with PVA glue. And just for fun, I added a tiny keyhole to the doorknob. The tiny space that I created behind the door is made of cardboard and chipboard, and I'm not really sure what that space could be used for. I was thinking of keeping like maybe keepsakes in there or money. It kind of looks like it could be a miniature closet. I'm really not sure. If you guys have any ideas about what you would put in there, I kind of want to hear from you guys what you would do with it. Do you have anything that you would want to hide in a miniature? And if so, what is it? Should I just make it into a miniature closet? I'm not really sure, so leave me a comment down below. Yeah, I'll read through the comments and see what you guys come up with. So now it's all glued together and assembled, and it's just missing a top. I cut out a piece of chipboard, glued it down, and painted it to match. With that complete, it was time to work on the base of the model. I had a lot of bits and pieces of molding and craft wood that I've been cutting off tiny pieces of, but I still had a lot left. I thought the design of this molding would look really nice in this tiny library. Originally, this molding came from Home Depot, and you can find lots of nice molding there. You just kind of have to search and make sure that it's smaller and will fit a small scale project. I usually look for something that's under an inch in width. I eyeballed 45-degree angles and then cut it with this jeweler saw. I wanted mitered corners, but I didn't really want to go through the hassle of measuring and doing it neatly. And I was going to be painting over these edges anyway, so I wasn't really too concerned. I glued those pieces around the edges of the base. Because I wasn't precise and using a wobbly saw, it definitely had gaps left over. To fill in the gaps, I used some wood glue and some sawdust, which is a great hack for wood filler. Shout out to my neighbor who introduced me to that hack. To paint the wooden base, I used the same technique of India ink and then white acrylic paint. Sometimes you can run into issues with the waterproof wood glue and using paint that has been watered down, but if you're careful with the wood glue or you sand it down, you shouldn't run into too many issues. If you're interested in the products that I use in this video, I'll have a supply list down in the description box and links to where you can purchase them. And as an Amazon affiliate, if you make a purchase through using one of my links, I get a small commission. So that is another way, if you're interested, that you can support the channel. The part of the build that I was looking forward to the most was this part right here, building the ladder. But the ladder is, once again, one of those parts where I set out to have a straightforward build and my mind carried me away and got me distracted and I ended up doing more work than I thought I would have to. I made the main structure of the ladder out of wooden coffee stirs. My intent was just to glue this together, paint it, and then have it lean against the shelves in the library. Fortunately, or unfortunately, whichever way I feel like looking at it at any given moment, I asked myself the question, what if this rolling ladder actually could function the way it does in the real world at full scale? If you look up antique library ladders, they have a whole system where they attach to the shelves and roll along a metal pipe. They have various wheels and hardware, and I decided I wanted to recreate all of that. So I set out to make miniature versions of that hardware so that I could have peace of mind. I still wanted to finish this project in a reasonable amount of time, so I once again used just scraps that I had on hand from other builds. I carved out some wheels from expanded PVC, and then I shaped them using my Dremel, which, although it looks pretty small, it is a powerful tool. So, disclaimer for anybody watching this, if you are younger, this is for use with parental supervision only. Do not attempt to do what I am doing. I probably wasn't doing the safest way I could anyway. The interesting thing was trying to get the pieces to fit together and work the same way they do on a full-scale ladder. I was completely just winging it and trying to make it fit together the way that I assumed that it worked by looking at images. But there's definitely a difference between a full-scale ladder with a lot of weight to it and a 1/24th scale ladder that is basically weightless. Although the wheels all roll and everything fits together the way it should, it still doesn't work exactly the way it would at full scale, and I'm okay with that. I painted the ladder with acrylic paint and a little bit of hand sanitizer. Now, I can't tell you the science behind adding hand sanitizer because I'm not sure there is any. It was a completely random experiment because that is the type of person that I am. I ran into an unexpected issue that caused this to take even more time. In the past, I've had issues trying to glue these styrene pieces to each other or other things. And since I made these little brackets out of styrene sheets, I thought I might have trouble gluing them onto the ladder. I figured if I scuffed up the wood and the plastic and then super glued them together, that they should stick pretty well. So I went ahead and tried that out, but I tested it by sticking those two pieces together, which was obviously super dumb because the glue did exactly what it was supposed to do, and those two things were bound together for good. But because I didn't expect them to stick, I didn't place them in the correct locations, and it caused the entire ladder to be crooked. Such a rookie mistake. because everything was crooked and then I damaged part of the hardware trying to pry it off of the ladder. I ended up making everything over off camera and then continuing from there. Sorry if there's thumps in the background. My cat refuses to let me record this voiceover. To give the metal parts an antique gold finish, I used some more of that same gilding wax from the doorknob. And then I used super glue to join the remaining parts to the ladder. After the ladder was attached, I was able to glue everything down to the base. The last big part of the library was the most important part, which is the books. I've made miniature books before, and I know a lot of crafters who've made miniature books and have a lot of fun doing it. I got kind of addicted to making these little things, and that was actually a good thing because I had to make about 1 million of them. My trick to make books a little bit faster is I cut out strips of chipboard, which I'm using as the interior of the books instead of paper. And then I cut out the covers from my printable page and glued them on in a row. And then just cut them off one by one using some scissors. To make them easier to place on the shelves, I glued them together in tiny groups. I'm actually pretty surprised. Paul was behaving very well. His favorite game is usually knock whatever Miss Mini Life is crafting onto the floor and then under the couch. Although he did still try to attack my hand at least a couple of times. I added some things last minute, like library catalog drawers and cards, and some books that were askew because this is based on a forgotten library. So someone just closed this place up in a hurry and tossed the books back without actually determining where they go. I used a little bit of white paint to distress some areas of the floor where I felt like the rolling ladder might have rolled across the floorboards and a little bit behind the door. And after those finishing touches, the library was complete. This is the finished product. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this video was a little bit longer than my videos tend to be normally, so thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.